Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Strong.
Good morning.
How is everyone today? Are you excited to be back in the Talon, or are you kind
Yes.
of liked having your mornings off? Well, let's I'll tell you, I have to admit there's been part of me that has really enjoyed having like a super light schedule, but I am excited to be here today, and I kind of hope you are too. All right, well, let's just kind of see. Let's go through and make sure everyone's on the roll. So let's see. We have Avery.
He's coming.
Okay. You know, it takes a special kind of guy to be late the first day of class, but anyway, Avery's that special. Okay, Jay. There's Jay and Lauren. There's
Everyone
Lauren.
else.
Ricky. Hey, Ricky. Kinsley. And, okay, Sari Murdoch. Is Sari Murdoch? Hey, Avery. Okay, there's Sari.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
That's kind of funny. All right. So Siri thought I was, oh, never mind. Okay. So Sari, you've had college algebra? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, awesome. And Jill. And let's see, that's, wait a minute, what about Daniel? Or Seth, excuse me. Seth,
Here.
did you turn in paperwork? Did you register?
Yeah, I did. It might not have gotten there yet, I guess.
Okay, I'll follow up on that, and you follow up on it too. Okay? Just because we got to make sure. That's his
All
brother.
right.
Sorry, I know his brother. All right, so let me write a note for that, Seth. Let's see. Are you on the? Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, you're not on the official roll yet, and so we just got to make sure. So check with Mr. Bushman, and we'll see how that goes. Okay. So let's see. Holbrook, we've got Andres. There we are in the back. Desiree. Okay. Naomi. All right. And Raylan. All right. I can see you. Caitlin. Awesome. Zyrus. Nice. Tara. Okay. Madison. All right. Sierra. Awesome. Hannah. There she is. Jocelyn. Okay. And Serena. Wonderful. Let's see. Anna. Anna Marie. Okay, there we go. All right, so was there anyone there in Holbrook whose name I did not call?
Mine.
Okay, and who are you?
My name is Cabry Razor.
Okay, spell your last name for me.
Raisor.
S-O-R. And your first name?
Kay capital Bree.
B-R-E-E. Cabry?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so Cabry, same thing that I told Seth, is you need to follow up with Miss Smith, because you're not on my official roll, and I'll follow up with Miss Heaster. And so between the two of us, we'll make sure that your paperwork gets done.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Anybody else? Did I miss anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, so before we get started with the lesson, let me just actually, even before I talk about the syllabus or whatever, I do want to comment on a couple of things from your evaluations, okay, that I read. And actually, before we do that even, let me just tell you that, so my father, and I think I might have told you this part before, but my father has actually been teaching college math for, I think it's over 50 years, okay? And I've been teaching for over 30 years. So together between the two of us, over 80 years of experience. And both of us say the hardest college class is not Calculus 3. It's not trig. It's college algebra, the class that you just passed. So first of all, give yourselves a hand for getting through. Okay, that was a tough deal last semester. The pace is just really tough to get through all of that material. Even some of the stuff that's maybe easier, the problem is we have to shoehorn it into one semester. And even the stuff that you might think, oh, that wasn't too bad, there's a lot of it in college algebra. So congratulations for getting through. Again, what I think is the hardest class. So what does that mean? Well, that means trig this semester, in my opinion, is much easier. And the main reason is because there's a lot less of it. The pace isn't near as frenetic. I mean, you still have a college pace. And I do want to comment on that, is that several of you in your evaluation, you talked about, you know, I would, if I were the teacher, I would slow down. I would only do one semester. I mean, I would do one section per week or something like that. Okay, you have to understand that we have to get through the material to prepare you for the next class. And it's not like in high school. So if I was your high school teacher, we would have time to play games and to do different fun activities, and you know, and I love that about being a high school teacher, is you do have some time to relax and do different things, okay? However, in the college setting, it doesn't work that way, because typically, like let's say, in college algebra, we had 16 weeks, 3 times a week. So that's 48 days. And then if you count out the, you know, final or whatever, I mean, I only had about 40 days with you guys. All right. So now that same material in a high school class, you have you have over a year to do it. But let's just say you do it in 1 year. Yeah, that's 180 days, or 147 in Joseph City, or whatever. But still, the point is that there's a huge difference between covering the material in 40 days versus 140 days. Anyway, and so the idea of the pacing, that is a huge difference in college. And I know that we're some of you that really reacted to that. And you just kind of have to know it's going to be frenetic. Let's see. And so when you talk about, you know, getting more in depth, I would love to get more in depth into the different topics. The problem is that there is a certain level of material that we have to go through. So I've tried to, you know, every year, every class that I teach, I sort of evaluate. Do I need another example there? Do I need one less example there? And I critically evaluate after every class. I kind of try to decide, maybe I spent too much time, maybe I didn't spend enough time. And so anyway, let's see. Now, a couple of people suggested that we only do quizzes right after the material that we cover. The problem with that is our schedule, is that we can't, you know, we're going to continue to do quizzes on Wednesday. And so sometimes if we finish a section on Tuesday, I don't want to turn around and give you the quiz the next day where you haven't had a chance to work on it. And so then it's going to be at least a week. And so I apologize for that. And again, it's the type of thing where I know you're used to, in high school, you finish a section, you have a quiz, and you move on. And we are at the mercy a little bit of what's going on. I just kind of want you to be aware of that. Same thing with in a period. Typically, that's what, if this was a trig class, a live trig class, you would have the hour to take a test, and you wouldn't have more than that. And so a number of you called for more time to do tests because you're saying that you can't get through the second attempt. So let me just remind you again that when we do multiple attempts on the quizzes and tests, if you don't think you're going to be able to finish it, then I want you to reschedule the second attempt at another time, okay? That the second attempt is a bonus. In my live classes that have paper and pencil tests, they don't get a second attempt, okay? And so think of that as a positive thing, and most of you do. It's a positive thing that you get a second attempt to improve your grade. Now, several people asked me about why don't you take the highest score? And let me just kind of address that again. As I know I've talked about it before, but I want to mention again, is that in classes where I've done the highest score, I've had too many people that just whip through the test the first time. And I had one guy do it in 16 seconds. That took the test in 16 seconds. And then on the retake took, 50 minutes or whatever. And so what's he doing? He's just guessing randomly and then only doing the problems that he misses. As a teacher, I find that kind of offensive. I don't feel like that's real learning. And so that's why I don't do highest score anymore. Okay. Now, as far, okay, so two things though that a couple of people suggested, and I would love to have your input on this. Is one person said, look, let's just not do any quizzes at all. And just do the tests, the midterm, and the final. All right? So how many of you would prefer that? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of downs. Okay, so just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you would prefer. So yes means continue with the quizzes. Let's see, how do we want to continue with the way things are? Down means do away with the quizzes. Okay, all right. Okay, so we'll just kind of keep that how it is. One of the reasons why, this sounds kind of, I don't know, might sound weird, but for most people, their quiz average is higher than their overall average, which means your quizzes are pulling your grade up. And so if that's the case for most people, it kind of makes me want to keep the quizzes because I feel like it helps students. So that's kind of my thing. So any comments on that, on the quizzes? And so, and the other thing is in my mind is I do quizzes in lieu of homework. I want to know how you're progressing, how you're studying for each section. And so where I don't do homework and I don't really have a good way to collect homework, again, if you were all in the classroom here physically, just know I would require homework, but we're not doing that. Okay. Now, the other, not so much with your grade, but the other classroom management thing that I would like to discuss is, and it didn't really come up so much in this class, but I'm just going to mention this to all the classes, is that because of the way that that we're operating here through the television system or whatever is that it is real easy for students to mute and then carry on entire conversations without really paying attention to what's going on in class. Okay. Now I would ask, and here's where it gets a little dicey, is that for me, the classroom environment and you being able to learn, that's really important to me. And so it's one thing for you to tune out, but when you become a constant distraction for other people, then that's where it's got to stop. And so I have had some people communicate with me about certain individuals. And again, really the biggest problem that I have is not in this section. But I will say this is that I'm going to try to be more aware of that. And so if there is someone in your class that is a constant disruption and is talking or on their phone or showing videos or whatever the case may be, okay, I would first like you to ask them to just knock it off and not to be so distracting. Say, hey, it might work for you to pay attention, 10 seconds out of every minute, but I need to pay attention all the time. Okay? Just ask them. Say, could you please stop doing that? Or turn the video off or quit texting or whatever. It's a distraction. Okay? If that doesn't work, then I would like you to talk to your talent aide or email me directly and just say this individual. And I will put a stop to it. Now, again, the class that I'm really worried about is not this one. And just to let you know, I do have a class where I had a number of individuals talk about someone that was just watching videos during class, making sure everything was on mute. And I'm just like, that's one reason why I want the phones put away, calculators out. Okay. So anyway, just remember, this is your class. I want you to learn. And if there's any distractions going on, please, let's take care of it. But you have to take some responsibility too, because I might not see it. Okay. All right. So any questions on any of that? Any comments or other concerns? All right. Well, let's. Okay, so as we talk about the syllabus for Math 189, okay, I sent it to your talent aides. Also, it's posted on the Moodle. So I'm not going to really, it's pretty much the same thing as last semester. Let me just kind of highlight a couple of the differences. It talks about what pre-calculus is, the prerequisite. The next class in after this that you would take would be Calc 1. Okay, the text is the same textbook. So this time we're going to cover chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, and 11. Remember, chapter 10 was the one on the matrices and so on. So one good thing is that it's actually less material. It's 5 chapters instead of 6. And so that makes it much easier to handle. The chapters 6, 7, and 8 are the ones that are really about the trigonometry. And then at the end, we have a couple of chapters that have some kind of other stuff that we need. All right. So the breakdown of the grade is going to be the same. final, midterm, quizzes, tests, attendance. Okay.
Professor Strong?
Yes.
So it says it goes from chapter 9 to 11. When we get to chapter 11, are we going to be tested on, like, review stuff from chapter 10 as well?
No.
So, like, do study back
No.
up? Okay.
No, because, see, like, okay, so because as far as MPC goes, it's like everyone has a reset button. Y'all have 100% right now. So how you did or what you didn't do last semester doesn't matter. Okay, we're all starting fresh, and so that's just the material that we start from today through May. That's it. That will be on the final. Okay. All right. Any other questions before I move on? All right, so grade breakdown, quizzes and tests. Again, remember that you need to make arrangements with me if you're going to miss the Wednesday when we do the quizzes or tests. Homework. Again, I'd strongly encourage you to do a sample of the odd problems in each section. Okay, that's midterm and the final, those will be done during class time on the Moodle. If you miss taking the midterm or the final and prior arrangements have not been made, you'll receive a score of 0. No quizzes or tests will be reopened after the midterm or final. So I'm hoping to not have the same issue that I had last time, where some of you had your emails sent to me that were going into my junk email. So a couple of things that as I've looked into that could help is that when you email me, if you'll use your MPC email, it's less likely that it'll turn into a junk email. The second thing is you always want to put a subject in the subject line, even like question or problem on the test or whatever. Don't leave that blank. Because whatever the computer program uses to put stuff in the junk email folder, if you don't put a subject line, it thinks it's spam. And so if you don't put a subject in the subject line and you're texting me from prettygirl@rocket.com or whatever, and you've got some funky email, it's gonna likely put that in the spam folder, in the junk email. So use your MPC and use a subject line. Okay. Okay, same study tips as last time. Practice daily. The answers to the odd problems are in the back. Work on the practice problems with a friend, classmate, or tutor. When you cannot solve a problem, put it aside and come back to it later. YouTube, Khan Academy are great places to go for extra help. If you can't find your mistakes, start over. Include your steps. Show your work. Do the easy problems first. Get a free tutor or try tutor.com. Okay. So let's see. Now I know that. Anyway, there'll be a course improvement survey at the end. Student services have a variety of things that if you're interested in, safe colleges, whatever. Okay, so does anyone have any questions on any of that? We kind of went over that in a lot more detail last time, but not much is changing through this semester. All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about pre-calculus then. Okay. All right. So Okay, so last semester we took college algebra, Math 152. This semester is Math 189, trigonometry. Together, they form pre-calculus. So sometimes, people are like, are you taking pre-calculus or are you taking trig? And the answer is yes. You're taking both of them because trig is part of pre-calculus. Okay, and so there are a lot of colleges that might name it different ways, or a lot of your high school might even, call it pre-cal trig or whatever. I think Holbrook, in fact, has the year-long course is called pre-calculus trig. And so it's a little confusing because you're not taking any trig at all until January. And so, or people think, oh, is the first semester pre-calculus, the second semester trig? Anyway, just know that that together it's considered pre-calculus. Okay? Now, so a successful completion of pre-calculus, or if your high school has another course that's equivalent, so this class is really what sets you up for a 4-year university, okay? And so, not to say that it's actually required for every major or every university, but in the past, this is what most universities wanted out of their students, was to get through trig. So again, usually like I remember there was a few years ago that one of my students had an academic scholarship and then couldn't use it because they didn't go on to take trig. And that was very sad. Now, since then, they've kind of changed the law a little bit where you might be okay at some places with just the college algebra. But definitely, I think if you're thinking about going on to college, and hopefully all of you are, then this is exactly where you need to be. Okay? All right, so the first 3 chapters are all about the trigonometry, 6, 7, and 8. But the problem is that it's kind of hard for us to get through three of the 5 chapters before the midterm. So the midterm will definitely have 6 and 7 on it, and then part of 8 is, we'll usually cut it off somewhere in there. The final will cover all of it. Okay. All right. So we're starting in today on chapter 6, the trigonometric functions. Now the feedback on the guided notes was overwhelmingly positive. So I'm continued to do that, and I sent those out. So does anyone not have the guided notes for this section? Okay, wonderful. Now, I'm going to try to also post the notes, the guided notes ahead of time, so that like if you want to see what's coming next, or if you're out of town when the Talent Aid distributes the notes and you want to have that ahead of time, I'm going to try to make that available. Okay, so the first section is on radian and degree measure of angles. Now, does anyone know? I know you know about degrees. What's a radian? Does anybody know what a radian is?
It probably has something to do with the radius of the shape of a circle.
That's a very smart answer. And I'll address that in just a minute. Anybody else want to take a shot at what a radian is? Or maybe you've studied it before. All right, well, I'm just kind of seeing what we know already. Okay, so, let's see. Okay, so I guess this is talking about the setup here. So on the Moodle, after each section, within 24 hours is my goal. So one, I'll put up the Smartboard lesson and upload that as a PDF. Okay, and once again, it includes many examples, maybe even more so, because every time I've had a lot of students ask questions from the book, and or they would just like another example, and so there's lots of examples on the lesson in the lessons that we don't go over. Okay, maybe twice as many. So if you ever need more examples of what we do in class, I would start there. Okay. Then the video is of me teaching by the date and by the section. So usually I'll put up there, okay, this is 6.1 and so on. Okay, and then we'll do our quizzes. And again, that's going to be on Wednesdays. Now, one of the things that if we can, I know that several people said that 3 quizzes was kind of tough. I'm going to try to shoot for only 2 quizzes on Wednesdays, but sometimes we might have to do 3 in order to keep up. Because just as there are probably more people that were concerned when we get behind on the quizzes. And then when we take the quizzes and it's been like 2 weeks since we discussed that, and especially like we might run into that like over spring break or something like that. So anyway, so 2 attempts, average score. So that all is going to be the same. Now, the topics in this section, the first part is on the unit circle and angle measure, conversion between degrees and radians, commonly encountered angles. This part you probably have seen before in either geometry or algebra 2. Now the arc length and angular speed, area of a circular sector, you might have only seen that if you've had physics. So by show of hands, how many of you have had physics or are currently enrolled in physics? Just kind of curious. Okay. So, all right, thank you. So you 3 there might have a little advantage to this. So that helps me know to teach that as if nobody knows anything about that. Okay. So I won't assume anything there. All right. So let's start with the trigonometry. What does trigonometry mean? Well, from the Greek, it means measurement of triangles. And so trigonometry initially was all about triangles. And so when you study it in geometry, it's always in relation to triangles. And so in triangles are used in astronomy, navigation, and surveying. Well, then as calculus became more important, and we talk about this a lot at the beginning of calculus, there was the idea of trigonometry as a function. Like you put in an angle and then figure out what the sine is or the cosine, and not really using triangles all the time. Well, that sort of opened things up. A function approach led to many physics applications: rotations, vibrations, sound waves, light rays, planetary orbits, vibrating strings, pendulums, orbits of atomic particles, just to name a few. So if you want to know where am I ever going to use this, see places like music, astronomy, optics, nuclear physics, sound, just to name a few. Those are chemistry. All of those areas of study, you need trig, not just with angles and engineering and that kind of thing. And so it really opened up the world to a lot more applications of trig. Okay, looks like that's not working anymore. Okay, so when we okay, so in geometry, when we talk about an angle and we're measuring angles, so you imagine, you've got one side of a triangle. And so in that triangle, see, you say, well, this angle, we have the vertex, and then we're measuring it up counterclockwise. And so what this is that's not shown anymore is I actually had one of those protractors there. You know how you use a protractor to measure an angle in geometry. Well, then in Algebra 2, you study angles on a XY coordinate system. And so the initial side is on the positive x-axis, and again you measure up to the terminal side. So this was like in geometry, this is more in Algebra 2 how you studied angles. Okay? This is called standard position. And we'll do both of those. We'll do angles in the triangle and outside on the coordinate system. And so here we have our initial side, our terminal side, and then the vertex we put at the origin. Now, for unknown angles, we often use the Greek letter theta. And so theta just means an unknown angle. It's like in algebra how we use an x. Now, you can still use an x, and we do a lot for unknown angles. It's just if you wonder about this little weird symbol, it just means an unknown angle. Sine of theta, for example. Okay, so I'm just going through some vocabulary here before we really jump into all the notes here. So then we have what's called, well, first of all, we have a positive angle when we measure up from the x-axis. If we ever measure down, then that's a negative angle. Now see, that's different than in geometry. When you're measuring just the angles of the triangle, you say, you might have had your geometry teacher say, there's no such thing as negative angles. It's not exactly true, okay? It turns out, I had a professor that said, at some point in math, like 40% of what you know is actually unlearning the things you were taught incorrectly. So one of them is, you might have heard there's no such thing as a negative angle. Not true. When you measure down, that's a negative angle. All right, now, angles that have the same terminal side are called coterminal. So like if we measure up this way or down this way, if we have the same initial side and the same terminal side, then those are called coterminal angles. So you can have a positive or negative, or if you just go around the circle again. Now, does anybody know? Well, we'll come back to that. Okay, whoops. All right, so let's see if you understand what I'm saying here. So for practice 1A, it says draw an angle, label its initial side, terminal side, and vertex. So go ahead and do that, please. Okay, so maybe you had something like this, or maybe you had something like this, depending on if you were just drawing an angle in space or on the XY axis, okay? So the initial side is where it starts, The terminal side is where it ends. Okay? And then the vertex is the corner. All right, any questions on that?
So is the initial side, is that defined as the line that is on the x-axis?
Yes, when it's in standard position, standard position is when you have the XY, you're on the XY plane, and so then this is the initial right here. So it's always the positive x-axis, in fact, is the initial side. Always, when the angle is in standard position. And the vertex is always at the origin in standard position. Okay? So if you drew your angle in standard position, then yes.
Okay, so are we going to learn later what it's called when it's like dissecting between the two, the x and y intercepts? Does that make sense? So if the initial was going diagonal through the x and y in that quadrant, and the other, and the
then it just wouldn't be. Then it just wouldn't be in standard position. But I would say, you know, when we're dealing with the XY plane, I would say 90% of the time the angles will be in standard position. Okay. All right. All right. So now some notes. All right. So a unit circle is a circle with radius of 1. Okay. So 1 unit. An angle is in standard position when the origin is the vertex. A positive angle is generated by a counterclockwise rotation. So you're always measuring up. Whereas a negative angle is generated by a clockwise rotation. And the initial side for each of those is the positive x-axis. Actually, I'm going to put in positive. Oops. Whoop. There we go. Okay. Okay, so what do you call an angle between 0 and 90?
Acute.
Thank you. Are acute angles and lie in quadrant 1. What do you call an angle between 90 and 180 degrees?
Obtuse.
Obtuse. Very good. Miss Yazi's very happy today. They're obtuse angles and lie in quadrant 2. All right, so then we're going to talk about measuring angles in DMS. And DMS stands for degrees, minutes, seconds. And a degree is 3,600 seconds.
Mr. Strong,
Yes.
is a degree always that? And
Yes.
like no matter the size of the circle?
Correct.
Would the like if you had like a windmill though and like would the outside be traveling slower than that?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah. See, now when you're talking about speed or whatever, then the radius factors into that. But see, the angle, whether it's a small triangle or a big one, the angle is still going to be the same.
Oh yeah, I get it. Thanks.
So, but yeah, so that. So, degrees, minutes, seconds, what does that sound like? What does that sound like we're measuring? Minutes and seconds.
Time.
Time. Okay. So does anyone know what ancient civilization developed the clock? Anybody know? A little history?
He loves the Mayans.
The what?
The Mayans.
The Mayans? Okay, so here's the deal. The Mayans actually had about the most advanced mathematical system, and their measurement of the days was the most accurate in the world at the time, but not the clock. They didn't give us the clock. Any other guesses? That was an excellent guess.
The Aztecs.
The Aztecs also famous for their calendar, okay, which they probably stole from the Mayans, but anyway. But the Aztecs, that's also a great guess because they were very good at astronomy and so on. But again, more like the year to year, the seasons, the days, they got that down. But as far as breaking down the days into hours and minutes, it happened long before the Aztecs.
Maybe the Mesopotamians?
Ah, there we go. The Babylonians, in fact. Okay, good. The Babylonians, they gave us clock measure and they gave us angle measure as well. Okay. Now, anybody? So, we'll come back to that in just a second. Okay. All right. So one way to measure angles is in terms of degrees, and we use that tiny little symbol to represent the degrees. Okay. So it says a full revolution around the circle. Let's see, do I have that one? Okay. Where's those notes here? Well, I guess that's... Okay. So a full revolution is 360 degrees. A half revolution is 180 degrees. Okay. Now, why 360 degrees? Why would they have a circle all the way around the circle be 360 degrees? What's the logic there?
A year is 365 days, so it's like each degree is a day.
Yeah, so they actually just rounded. They rounded. I remember I used to think as a student, why didn't they just make it like 100? But 360 days in a year is what they based it on. Now it's kind of interesting that that like the Mayans, what they did, because see 360, a lot of numbers will divide into that evenly. And so you could break it down. Whereas 365, not so much. So what the Mayans did, and I love this, is the Mayans actually, their months were 20 days, and then they had 18 months. So they had 360 was kind of like their year. But instead of the Babylonians just rounding everything to 360, what the Mayans did is they had like 5 party days. It wasn't like part of the year. They're like, okay, so like New Year's Eve was like 5 days long. And so they would have these 5 party days and then start the new year, because then they would have it be 360. I love how math kind of drives the culture there. It's pretty cool. So anyway, all right, so, but 360. So here we have 0, 30, 45, so measuring up. So 90 degrees, what do we call that kind of angle? What's a 90-degree angle called?
A right angle.
Right on. And then you keep going, and then 180 degrees is a straight angle, straight across. And then you go down, and 270 is down, and then you come back up. And when you hit 0, 360 degrees. Okay? All right. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. I got to let you out a couple minutes early because it's the first day, but don't get used to it. Anyway, it's good to see you guys all back, and I hope you have a great day. I'm going to ask if anybody did anything amazing over Christmas break. So let me know tomorrow. Okay? All right, we'll see you. Have a great one.
Thanks, Mr. Strong.
Yeah.